Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Barbara, would you please call the roll?
We have Commissioners Sales, Holloman, Moss, and Parfait present.
Thank you. This proceeding will be broadcast on Channel 35. Thank you. GM report?
There are no items for the General Manager's report. In the interest of getting, we have a lot of items on the agenda today, so we can move right into consent calendar.
Okay, I do have a speaker card for item 2.
I think it's been withdrawn. Okay.
Okay, he's going to withdraw. Okay.
Thank you. Comments or requests from commissioners regarding operations? Commissioner Parfrey, Commissioner Holloman, Commissioner Moss. Public comment, I believe we have 2 speaker cards.
Yes. The first speaker is Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, El Sereno District. Basically, we've finished all of our fire hydrant painting. We do have some comments. We still have a few left to do because we have to get the caps to go on them. They look very nice, except for one thing. After about 6 to 8 weeks, they fade almost to white. So we're quite concerned regarding the provision of, it was supposedly federal specifications, but the lifetime of the paint, some of the painted fire hydrants have actually been touched up or repainted because they look so bad. But graffiti has been reduced or eliminated in most cases, so we like our fire hydrants. Over 500 fire hydrants, all with volunteer labor, painted. So we're quite concerned regarding the quality of paint for that. There's also a second item, putting on a different hat. For Sierra Club, we're concerned about gas and the sourcing of gas now. The national...
Wait, just so I'm clear, you're talking about natural gas?
Natural gas.
Okay.
Yeah, natural gas. Okay. Piped gas, if you want to call it. We're quite concerned about it as to how much of it actually comes from California, how much of it has been the product of hydrologic fractionation process, or fracked gas, and where does it come from? We're looking at the sources of our natural gas, which DWP uses a lot in the gas-fired power plants. So we'd like to find out if there's any way that we can get information regarding the sources of gas, either from California and or from fractionation processes on gas wells. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Tony Wilkinson.
Tony Wilkinson, Neighborhood Council, Department of Water and Power Memorandum of Understanding Oversight Committee. Item number 22 on your agenda today is going to be a report on the department's proposed rates for the coming 2 fiscal years. Last June, the department conducted an unprecedented outreach to the public on its rate requirements for 3 years. Through no fault of this board or the department, there was a delay in implementing the Office of Public Accountability to review those rate requests. The MOU with neighborhood councils provides a 6-month discussion period for multiple year rate requests. We are now 9 months past the original proposal, and in addition, the energy cost adjustment factor has been frozen. It pays, among other things, for renewable energy costs, and is jeopardizing the great achievements of the department and the city in renewable energy. So while we appreciate the department's going out to the public and the neighborhood councils with the new rate proposal, I do look at it as the same rate proposal that we've been looking at all along, which has not come to fruition. And I hope that the Office of Public Accountability can consider it as expeditiously as possible, and we can look at implementing it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last card for number 4.
Okay, on the consent agenda, we're going to discuss items 5 and 7. So is there a motion to approve items 6 and 8?
So moved. Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, those items are passed. Item 5, I think Commissioner Moss has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, there wasn't any discussion in the board letter on the local business preference. and I'd like to know how that was handled.
How you doing, Commissioner? Pizza Turco, Fleet Services.
Fausto Satino, Fleet Services.
So the question is, to what extent was the local preference applied in this procurement?
I believe that it was evaluated by purchasing, and they made a determination whether we use the short or the long language on this.
We have.
They made an evaluation.
Mr. Davis, I think.
Let me have.
He will answer that.
This one was, Daniel Davis, Purchasing Operations Manager. This one was done before we applied the local business preference.
I'm
It's
sorry.
one of those that was in the queue.
So it wasn't done.
applied to this one, though.
And why is that?
It was in the pipeline. We hadn't executed it yet.
Before the ordinance went into effect?
Well, it's in effect now.
That's correct. We had some things in the pipeline, and we had to keep going.
Commissioner, as a point of reference, I believe the approach that we've been taking on this is trying to, when we go out to bid, making it clear that the local bid preference applies. And some of these, just the time frame for our competitive bid processes is a bit cumbersome and long. And some of the things, and I believe you probably will still see a few more that might come through on another couple of meetings before I'm gone through the point where everything that applies to will have been solicited under the terms of having the local bid preference apply.
So it seems to me it's not unreasonable for us to apply this to those procurements that were begun once the policy was in effect.
Right.
So there could be some, but the point is well taken. We're very committed to local preference, but we understand there may be a transition here.
Right.
Correct.
At least that's my sense. Since the board, any people, is that okay with
I
the
agree.
group?
Fine with that.
It's a good point, though, Commissioner Moss. Anything else on 5?
No.
Same question on 7?
No, 7's a little different.
Let me
Okay,
someone
let's
move.
go to 5.
Let's move 5.
I'd like to move to approve item 5.
Is there a second? Any objections? Hearing none, item 5 passes. Item 7?
Thank you.
The question I had on this one is, in the board letter, there was no real discussion of the bid itself, with no information about who the bidders were or what the bid amounts were, and so the question is, why was Integra chosen?
There were 3 bidders, and all 3 bidders were considered and evaluated, and Integra was evaluated based on a number of criteria that we have set, including the qualifications, the experience, and the process by which they were going to perform the work.
Okay, and what were the bid amounts for the 3 bidders?
Oops, sorry.
Or let me rephrase the question, was Integra the lowest bidder in this instance?
Yes.
Yes, they were.
Okay, was it
Integra
by a
was the lowest.
substantial amount, or?
I have to defer to staff. Hold on.
My name is George Fogelson. I work in employee health and benefits.
George, why don't you use the other microphone so you don't have to
Behind
hurt
you.
your back? There's one
At
right
the
behind you.
podium.
Safety first.
Yes.
My name is George Fogelson, employee health and benefits. It was substantial. We rated them, and we asked for criteria on how they perform their drug and alcohol tests. There's 2 different tests, and how much they charge for each, and it was substantially less than the other 2, so that's why we chose them.
Okay, let me just ask that in the future you put that information in the board letter. That would be helpful
That's
to know.
helpful.
Understood.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Yes, so moved for
Second.
approval. Second.
Any objection? Hearing none, item 7 passes. We're going to go into a brief closed session on item 20. So we'll be back shortly.
Mr. President, let me
I'm sorry,
spec-
we need our admonition.
and this will be in closed session under C, conference with labor negotiators, and the board shall report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon, in accordance with Section 54 and 957.1 of the California Government Code.
Thank you.
This is going to be
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I ever knew.
make clear that we were actually dealing not with item 20, but item 23. That is the report of the civil grand jury. We take that very seriously. It's a very complicated issue that really merits the full attention of the board. I think what I'd like to do is actually take item 20 out of order now, and I believe we have a couple of speaker cards on item 20. I do want to be very clear for the record that, as I said, we take this very seriously. It's because of the Brown Act provisions, we can't have serial meetings. We have to work this individually. If you look at this report, it's very complicated, raises some legitimate but very technical and detailed issues, and we want to give it the appropriate attention. It is our hope and expectation that we will submit our response and approve our response, not at this meeting, but at our next meeting. Any other comments from my fellow commissioners? So why don't we, if we've got public comment on number 20, why don't we have those comments now?
Okay. The first speaker for number 20 is Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council. We were quite interested in what are the responses? Approval of response to the LA County grand jury. What are the responses from the Department of Public Works regarding this rather long, laborious document? However, it wasn't put online, so how can we make meaningful comments if there's nothing provided to the public to respond to? I hope the responses of LADWP will be available online for the next consideration. Thank you.
So here's the challenge.
I do have one more card.
I know, but I want to respond to that. We're going to have an open discussion next week, right? We're actually going to argue at the next board meeting. We're actually going to argue our responses, and then at the end of the meeting, we will agree on what our responses are going to be.
It was a resolution recommending approval of the response, and there was no public accessible response.
That's why we're not acting on it today.
Well, then I would have said it needs to be under closed session.
No.
Okay. We have one more speaker card.
Yes, the next speaker is Joe Safier.
Good afternoon, President Sales, members of the commission, or the board, excuse me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. We can
Okay. Good afternoon, President Sales and members of the board. I'm speaking, my name is Joe Safier. I'm speaking as a private citizen, and as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I was the foreperson of the civil grand jury which issued the report in question. I'm glad to see that you are addressing the response to the report. I'm very anxious, obviously, on behalf of myself and my fellow civil grand jurors, prior civil grand jurors, to see what those responses are. And if a draft is available to be available on as an agenda item at the next meeting before you approve it, that would be great, so that we can comment on it prior to your discussion. If it cannot be presented to the public until after it's approved, I understand that, given the rules of the Brown Act. But again, I commend you for finally addressing this, and I'm anxious to see what the responses are.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have one more card. The next speaker is Linda Romney.
I know the county representative was here at our last meeting, and of course brought to the attention of the Department of Water and Power Commissioners that the 90 days had come and gone and he had not received a response from the DWP. And here we have it on the agenda. I have not seen the draft. Is the draft on the website? Do we have it up on the web? Is there somewhere where we can as ratepayers can see this beforehand so that we can discuss this intelligently and ask questions at the next meeting? It's a question. Anybody can answer that question. There's no response. All I'm saying is that for the ratepayers, we would like to be involved in this very, very important issue. And we cannot be involved unless we have the facts in front of us. And so I'm asking that those facts be presented to us in compliance with the Brown Act beforehand. That is my request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would like to move that we defer item 20 to our next board meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Any objection? Hearing that item 20 is deferred. And obviously, I heard the comments, and we'll try to figure out a way to get this matter before the public so we can have a meaningful discussion. At the same time, it's subject to a lot of deliberation and different points of view amongst my fellow commissioners. All right, let's go to item 9.
I'm Richard Harrisick. I'm the Assistant Director of Water Operations for the department. So what we have before us today is the purchase of shade balls, which is part of an overall strategy that will result in compliance with the surface water treatment rule and the disinfection byproduct rule, both which are federally mandated regulations. You'll remember that we've used this strategy already on our Ivanhoe and Elysian Reservoir, and the circumstances in that is that we're serving groundwater that contains bromide, and when bromide and chlorine that we use for disinfection and sunlight meet, we form bromate, which is a regulated substance. And so the solution was not to exclude a local resource in our groundwater, and certainly we need to use chlorine for disinfection, but we in effect got rid of the sun, and we used shade balls to remove that part of the equation. At Los Angeles Reservoir, it is a fast and economical measure that will result in compliance with those two regulations that I mentioned. The alternative that we had before that was a $350 million project, which would be to rebuild that reservoir, cover it, and so that we can still continue with operations, actually build an additional reservoir as part of that strategy. Shade balls combined with 2 new UV ultraviolet disinfection plants will result in a project that is 3 times less than that. The purchase of these shade ball also has a provision for purchasing balls for Upper Stone Canyon Reservoir as an interim measure to keep the water that's going through that reservoir in compliance as well. So specifically, the shade balls will lower the potential for algae blooms within Los Angeles Reservoir and Stone Canyon Reservoir, and therefore, when combined with lesser amounts of chlorine, will result in a less disinfection byproduct formation in the distribution system. So in this specification 333, we found ourselves in an unusual circumstance where we had all bidders were deemed non-responsive for a variety of reasons. And so we found that it was in the best interest and determined to be in the best interest of the department to negotiate with the lowest bidder, Phoenix Plastics, as the appropriate purchasing method and the appropriate legal remedy. So they had a couple of issues, and we required them to submit 10 additional shade balls with a concern over their wall thickness, and also submit a manufacturer's warranty, both of which they did, and both issues which are now satisfactory to the divisions and articles within that specifications. So staff is recommending, in view of those facts, that it's in the department's best interest to award what we're calling a negotiated contract with Phoenix Plastics.
Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Parfrey?
Mr. McDaniel, what's the timeline on this? I know that we're in a hurry to do the transition to chloramines, and I know that's why we're fast-tracking the shade balls, but the fact that all of the proposed contracts were non-responsive, I'm just wondering if there's time to rebid this.
This is actually, I believe, the third time, Rich, that we've bid this.
It's really the third time, really the second time that we've gone to at this length. The real, to answer the question on the schedule, so we have to meet the disinfection byproduct rule by April 2014. We estimate that it will take, and actually given the contractor, 540 days from the beginning of production to deliver all those shade balls on top of LA Reservoir. There'll obviously be a number of months before the contract is in swing. And so if you do that math, obviously you're done before April of 2013, but only about 6 months. And what we would desire to do, to be able to do, is to operate LA Reservoir with the shade balls on them, because it's going to reduce in a far drastic application of chlorine. And so as we're getting into a chloraminated system, we just want to give ourselves 6 months of playing with that new reservoir, which is obviously, really, it is the beginning of the system. And so looking at that, that would probably eat up that option. It is an option that's there for the commission, but it would put us in a position where we'd probably put the last shade ball on and have to turn the system on live, not knowing really how it responds.
And I might add, Commissioner, that you recall that the board approved at the last board meeting the extension that we negotiated with EPA to give us our additional 2 years. EPA has subsequently ratified the extension that was approved by the board. But we are currently tracking compliance both with the old methodology and with the new methodology. And it's apparent that that we do have areas in the water system of higher concentrations of trihallomethanes and haloacetic acids that we would like to see. The sooner that we can implement these shade balls, the better the quality of the water is going to be for our customers. We're in compliance either way, but we can make it better by getting this done sooner.
I was reading that Phoenix had created the plastics for this, and it wasn't the appropriate thickness. It was too thin. I mean, this is a lot of money being spent on a product that we hope has a long life.
Sure.
And I noticed also that the minimum was $5.1 million on this contract, with the projected amount was 5 times that amount. Now, usually there is a spread, the difference between the minimum and the maximum, but not 5 times typically. And I was hoping that you could possibly explain, this discrepancy.
Actually, the 5 times is the normal. Usually and you can verify this with Mr. Davis or Mr. Collins, but we usually set a minimum purchase at 25% of the expected utilization and a maximum at 125%. I think you'll find that on other contracts, so it is within the standard provisions that we put. We do that to give ourselves flexibility and not to obligate ourselves to the minimum amount possible, but to give us the flexibility to do more.
So it's not that Phoenix is going to supply the full complement of shade balls for LA Reservoir, but that they would only supply potentially 25% of the shade balls? That would be our contractual obligation, or would the price come down substantially? Which one is it?
The obligation is 25% of the expected usage. We expect to purchase we expect to purchase 100%. I'm just saying that if something changed, or if say the contract ran into problems that didn't rise to the level of a breach, but for whatever reason we didn't want to do that, we wouldn't be obligated to purchase more than 25%. Our current plan is to purchase the entire amount on this contract.
What's the feasibility of an alternative supplier for the remaining 75%?
I'll defer.
Is that a realistic possibility?
To go out
Let's
and
assume from plastics we purchased the first 25%, the $5 million. But for whatever reason, short of a breach, we were not happy with their performance. What's the likelihood or possibility of us going to an alternative supplier?
Under this bid?
Under a similar bid.
Well, you could, as you were approaching that, you could put another bid out and have those two periods overlap. I will say that all the bidders had some issue that just put them out of spec. But when you look at our specs and you look at this purchase, it is a purchase of, a widget, if you will. And the requirements that we have, in spite of what was bid, we feel we have a pretty tight spec that allows us, that provides for us the assurance that the balls are being produced batch by batch to our compliance specifications. We intend to have a full-time inspection on this, and the vendor will have to provide means and methods to us and follow those under our approval of how he will make corrections as the batches are coming out. So we do not have to take any batch that contains even one ball that doesn't meet it, and he's under the obligation to perform under that. Worst case, you obviously have breach. We don't want to go there. We obviously want to work with our contractor, but we feel that we have specifications in place that gives us assurance that we'll get what we specified for.
Mr. Davis, I see you standing there. You want to add something for the good of the cause?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
I have a question, though. What is the projected life expectancy of the ball?
10 years.
10 years. And the concern about the thinner wall that was the initial problem with Phoenix, was that something related to the how well the ball would work, or is it related to the life expectancy of the ball?
Just the durability and life expectancy. So the actual case, what we did was we took the balls and cracked them in half and did spot measurements. So at certain spots, it was less than the minimum thickness.
So arguably, if the quality of production of Phoenix is not to our satisfaction, we would still have enough balls to keep us in compliance, keep it in the air.
Let's hope so.
Keep us in the compliance with the Water Act, and then get other balls from another supplier. Is that correct?
Right, but I believe that with the on-site inspection that we're going to provide, we are confident that they will be able to meet the quality requirements. We are not going to accept substandard balls.
And we've got appropriate quality control measures in place.
Yes.
Correct.
So all bidders were deemed non-responsive?
For one reason or another.
Phoenix because they were the lowest bidder. What was the delta between Phoenix and the next lowest bid?
$3.3 million, which is 16% difference. So it's a significant amount.
Assuming the $25 million purchase, or assuming the $5 million purchase.
Assuming the what we expect to put on LA Reservoir, so 100% difference, 100%. What we actually expect to spend.
Commissioner Parfrey?
I'm satisfied.
Commissioner Moss?
I'd like to make a motion. We go balls out and get this contract.
I have a speaker card for this item.
I'll second. Any objections?
I have a speaker card for this item.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. We have a speaker card.
Speaker is Linda Romney.
I just have a question concerning the R&D on these 76 million balls that are 4 inches in diameter. Are you all serious about this? What else has been suggested, and what has your R&D been? I know you did a pilot program on this, a very short pilot program, but what else have you investigated? It doesn't seem logical that this is the answer, to have 76 million little 4-inch diameter balls for this specification. And further, that you don't have the number of people bidding that you should properly have. Something is wrong with your system, and it needs to be corrected. I think we have plenty of time until the April of 2013 to open this up again and get some bids in here. And not only just specifically on this item, but open it up to what else logically is available, because this cannot be the only answer for these reservoirs. 43 million balls, 4 inches in diameter. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the speakers for that item.
Is the motion pending?
Yes.
And second. Any objection? Hearing none, the item passes. I want to move to item 22, because I think a lot of the folks that came are interested in item 22B, and I want to be respectful of your time, so why don't we move to that matter?
Thank you, Mr. President. And you'll recall at our last special meeting, we discussed the fiscal year 12-13 budget, and in there was an introductory discussion with respect to to rates that were associated with that single year. We are now talking about, and this is a presentation only that will kick off a process related to a 2-year rate process, that first year of which would be consistent with the budget that we spoke about last year. As a result of having a fair amount of discussion about that budget at our last meeting, I'm not going to repeat all of that information today. You have that information in your prior package, and we did discuss it at some length last week. But so I'm going to focus more on the oversight with regard to the rates that we're dealing with. And just as a reminder, about a year ago, just a little less than a year ago, we started a whole process about what were the things that were driving the costs to Los Angeles Department of Water in both water and power, and that were requiring a rate adjustment. And a key aspect of that in many areas for both power and water is the legal mandates that are really requiring a transformation on the supply side, the power and the water side, and they're requiring it at very quick rates. And then common to both of our systems are the age of our system, the fact that we are a century-old system, and there's a fair amount that we have not attended to over the years, and it's catching up with us. Last year, when we were talking about things on both the water and the power side, there were a number of things that were pending still, and a lot of legal mandates that were out there but not yet decided upon, and required us to make some assumptions with respect to what was going to be required and some timing of that. A lot of those, and I'll go over those in a minute, those things have become clear. They have been decided, and we are moving forward with a lot more clarity than we had right now. In addition, our aging equipment has gotten even older, and without the increases that we've had, we're still dealing with trying to play catch-up on investment. We did move. This board moved, and the council confirmed the water quality factor in January of 35-cent amount. That took care of getting us forward on our compliance on water quality, but it doesn't cover everything, and there will be no more this year, but in the second year, there's about another 40% of that $1.1 billion that we talked about that has to go forward. Yes?
I just want to clarify something. The statement is pays for about 40% of the $1.1 billion. Is that the principal, or is that the debt service on the $1.1?
That is the debt service on the 1.4, right. So that's a rate that gets in there, that gets established, and that effectively pays for, if you will, the mortgage, if you will, on 40% of that $1.1 billion. When we get into the next, not this coming fiscal year, but the next fiscal year, we start hitting the rest of it, and that gets addressed as part of this next rate consideration. We have deferred costs, as we talked about when we talked about the budget. Those are still in kind of the snowplow effect. And we do have a ratepayer advocate on board now, and we are beginning to work with the ratepayer advocate on this process that allows us to start moving forward in a more collaborative way. I mentioned there were a lot of things that added clarity last year, and that helps. Uncertainty is difficult in a utility environment, and things became more certain. Sometimes that certainty costs us more money, but in reality, we know what we're dealing with much more now than we did just a year ago. Renewable portfolio standards are no longer a goal, they are a law. And not only is a requirement to get to 33% by 2020, as we spoke about many times before you, there are a number of steps in between and some conditions around how you meet that 33%. We know what those are right now, and we're able to form our plans and commitments around those. The timing on getting elimination of once-through cooling at our coastal gas-fired plants is now known. We not only had a State Water Resource Control Board ruling on that last July, the Office of Administrative Law confirmed that position here just a few weeks back. Assembly Bill 32 on the carbon cap and trade, that was in discussion before the California Air Resources Board last summer. It is no longer. It's now, there is a timeline for it. The amount of carbon emission credits that would be allocated are established, and the timeline for them going forward, at least for utilities, has been established as well. That's no longer a question. Out of our state, Utah State Legislature made a recent move, and the reason that's important for us is it applies to the Intermountain Power Project in southern Utah. That's owned by the municipal organization, the Intermountain Power Authority, Joint Powers Authority of Utah municipal and public government utilities. Until legislation was recently passed, the only thing that they could own was coal-fired resources, and that's no longer the case. That allows some dialogue to start happening in between ourselves and the owners of that plant as to the long-term disposition of the Intermountain Power project from which we purchase power. We have spoken many times about our compliance with the California Department of Health and U.S. EPA drinking water standards, and we sought through an effort to try to buy some additional time, if you will, with regard to some of those covered reservoir projects, and that was turned down by the Department of Public Health and said, no, we have a compliance plan, you will adhere to it. So that gave us, I think, a lot more clarity with regard to our timelines that we have been dealing with are indeed the timelines that we will be held to. And one of the areas that in part, I guess, has been made clear, it's been clear that the Great Basin Air Pollution Control, Unified Air Pollution Control District, that has authority over Owens Valley and the dust that is produced from the dry up portions of Owens Lake, made it clear that we believe that they are not limiting DWP's obligations to ending dust emissions solely on those areas that we believe we're responsible for. To put a more clear point on that, we believe that they have made a clear statement that we have obligations to reduce dust that are not associated with our reducing the levels on Owens Lake historically. And we have a big problem with that. And now that we know that it's clear that they're taking that position, it is requiring some specific actions by this department that will be matters that will be spoken of probably for many meetings to come. We also spent last summer talking with our customers about investments that we aren't necessarily obligated in any individual year to make, although in most cases are things that we either are ultimately going to need to make by regulation or certainly need to make in terms of maintaining reliable service. And we called those strategic investments, and we got input from at some 35 different public meetings. Some 1,600 people provided input. And on the water side, made it clear that they gave as a high priority having more water conservation, funding more for our local water supply, which we spoke a bit about in our last meeting, talk a little bit more about today, and put more investment into our pipeline and infrastructure to address reliability. And a similar finding on the power side, that there's a strong support for energy efficiency, there's a strong support for developing a renewable portfolio standard in a way that helps provide for a clearer ownership and control over our renewable resources, to go forward on investments in power reliability, and to work forward on accelerating our replacement of coal. So there was a lot of input that we received from stakeholders in that process.
Ron, there were some failures this morning in the city. Can you speak to how old those pipes were?
You know, in terms of age, I'll turn that over to Jim. And Jim, if you could also maybe give a little bit of background with respect to the operational issue that we think might be behind that, that would be helpful.
Right. We had 6 main failures in West LA this morning. We believe that they were all related to reservoir operations that were going on related to the Franklin Canyon Reservoir. That's a reservoir that has a floating cover on it. We'd remove the reservoir from service to put divers into the reservoir underneath the cover to do an inspection. When we do that for safety reasons, the reservoir has to be isolated from the system for the safety of the divers. When we do that, we have to bring in alternate sources of water supply. A reservoir provides a nice constant level of water, which provides nice constant pressure. We had to bring water in at a slightly higher pressure from the valley side over the mountains when we did this operation. We'd made the adjustments to the system that we felt were necessary to accommodate the higher pressure. However, a number of these things depend on some mechanical valves to work in a certain way, and not everything always works the way it's supposed to work. We suspect that a pressure relief valve or valves did not open up as was expected to do, and we had about 9 to 14 extra pounds per square inch in the system. That caused these 6 lines to break. The ages of the lines that broke were varied from 43 years old to 85 years old. They were all cast iron mains. Most of them were in areas that have had traditionally, they've been problem areas. We had 130 customers out at the peak. As of 1 p.m., we were down to 90, and one of these lines has been restored since then, so we're probably closer to 60 customers out now. We expect to have everybody back in water by this evening. In response to that, we are performing some valve changes. We're going to, the operation, the inspection operation is going to go on until Thursday, so we need to continue this. We're going to change the way we bring the water in to reduce that pressure differential. We are inspecting all those relief valves to make sure that they're operating properly. We should have that done this afternoon. And we're going to put an extra night crew on tonight just to make sure. But what this points up is that we have a pretty fragile system that's old, and it needs to be replaced at a more aggressive pace than what we're doing. And if it's not this sort of, there's always something going on in the system, and if it's not this, it would be cold weather or something else that's going to stress the system. And when we have the whole, many parts of the system at a very fragile state, you're going to see these higher levels of breaks.
Thank you. So a lot of what we're talking about with rates all ties into to what we're facing on the path ahead. On the power side, our overall energy supply portfolio and the regulatory mandates are now a lot clearer. They set a path forward for us. We have been working extensively on an integrated resource plan, both a year and a half ago, an update last year, and we're kicking off a new one this year dealing this. And all the same, making some major changes in our system from the power supply and still trying to maintain grid reliability. We have put off any, and I mean any rate adjustment since the spring of 2010 for the power system, inclusive of fuel and power purchases, et cetera, and our renewable energy purchases, none of which has had an adjustment of any type whatsoever during that period of time. And we do need rate action as soon as we can get there. We needed it last year, and we need it even more desperately now. And so that is our #1 priority, and you'll see that when we talk a little bit about the schedule. On the water system, expanding our local water supply to reduce our reliance on imported water. We talked about that during the budget last week, of how we're seeing a perfect example of that, kind of in the extreme, going off from an incredibly wet year last year to what now looks like an incredibly dry year. And we do need to get ourselves to where we are not so subject to that. That's a major portion of our of these expenditures. And in the second year, as we get into this, the cost of both the water quality and our increasing our infrastructure replacement is a big driver for that. We aren't as in dire a shape on making rate adjustments for water because we at least dealt with the water quality issue in January, but we absolutely need to act by the October-November timeframe on this, and we'll talk about that because we have to get things ready to be able to undertake specific things starting the next fiscal year, July 1, 2013-14. And another area that's clear for us in both the water and the power area is doing a better job of customer service and working with our customers. We got a lot of input last summer, as I indicated, customers that want more water conservation, they want to deal more with what can be done on their side and to co-invest with us in water conservation, similarly on energy efficiency and on solar. And those all dovetail well with mandates that we have and things that we're trying to achieve. So we want to work better with them to have those programs work, and you'll see some costs associated with that. We also find that, as we see often at these meetings, we need to do more on on our customer information and interacting with our customers, and we'll be working on that, and there's some minor investments in those areas as well. We spoke last meeting about some of the key objectives that drove our budget. Those drive our multi-year rate situation too, and we are starting our next second century now of this utility. On the power side, it's the three key areas of replacing our power supply, enhancing and rebuilding for our reliability, and expanding our customer opportunities. In a very similar situation on water, it's the local water supply development, it's complying with requirements we need for safe drinking water, and providing for system reliability for delivery, in addition for breaks in addition to those that Mr. McDaniel spoke about. And we need to do all of that while we maintain competitive rates for our customers. The timeline that we're going to be talking about, this builds on last summer. We spent all last summer, as Mr. Ray indicated, Mr. Wilkinson indicated in his comments, we spent all last summer on this. This is a continuation of the process that we embarked on last summer. We are laying out today a 2-year rate plan. You'll recall last year was to be a 3-year rate plan. The 1-year rate plan ended up effectively for power being no rate increase whatsoever in this current fiscal year. And in water ended up being only the adjustments that we've had for the water quality and some downward adjustments that reflected the high availability of our local water because of the and Owens Valley water because of the great wet year we had. But otherwise, we've not had that, and we do need to move forward. Our plan is we will begin rolling out this. We'll be transmitting information to the ratepayer advocate this week and getting details above and beyond what you're seeing here today. And then we will continue the same type of outreach program we had last summer, and we will be working collaboratively with the ratepayer advocate in those meetings so we can have a more efficient use of our stakeholders and our customers' time as we go out. And the ratepayer advocate hears what our customers are saying to us at the same time that we do. On the power side, we would like to be able to have, ideally, we'd like to be able to increase rates and adjust rates at the beginning of this next fiscal year, July 1, because we know what we need to spend over the course of this year, and each month that delays, it just means we have to recover that same amount of money over a lesser number of months. So for the course of that year, we end up getting a higher rate increase percentage-wise for the year to do that. So we would like to do it by July 1. I don't believe we can. We do need to coordinate with the ratepayer advocate on this, and even though we've had a lot of public discussion on it last year, we need more, and it's going to take some additional time. We are targeting to try to have an August 1 effective date for the rates, and we'll see if we can get that done on the power side. And the only way we believe we can get that done on that time frame, because power is more complex than our water situation, is to defer a little bit of the time frame for starting on the water process, and in part that's so the ratepayer advocate can get on board with this while he ramps up. So we expect that would follow afterwards, but in any event needs to be done by the October-November time frame so that we'll have some contracts in place, and in some cases we need to hire and train some additional staff in the areas that would allow us to do some additional pipe replacement. So that's something that we have to get done well before the end of this calendar year to let that happen. So going to our key programs in power, we spoke about this at the last budget meeting. I don't intend to go over any detail on this before, again, because we've covered that before. But the drivers, again, are our power supply replacement programs, the reliability program, and these customer opportunities program, the details of which we spoke about last week. There's some additional question by the commissioners. I'd be happy to get into that during this presentation. We have laid out here, we spoke about what FY 12-13 numbers were going to be when we got together last week. This lays out now the additional year, so this last column is new information that we are presenting now, and shows that on the rebuilding of power plants, the principal piece of that is our rebuilding of our coastal gas-fired plants, specifically, and for these dollars, it's the completion of Haynes 5 and 6 and starting up Scattergood 3. And so it's fairly level with the current year over the next 2 years. We are ramping up our renewable energy as we work forward to get meet our requirements for maintaining 20% over the next couple of years and getting ourselves positioned so that we can ramp up. So we're going to have to make some, and Aaron will talk a little bit about this in one of his presentations on RPS. We're going to have to make some commitments here this summer with respect to projects that aren't going to start taking delivery until 2 or more years down the road. We don't incur specifically the coal transition costs in terms of backing out of Navajo during this 2-year rate period of time, but we are putting forward some of our renewable resources that will displace in the future the amount of power that we would need to get out of our Navajo plant. But as you can see here, we're rising from a little over $690 million this year for these areas up to almost $750 million 2 years out. An item that we talked about, I'm providing a little bit more information than we had last week. There were some questions by the commissioners on our reliability program and the level of we call them fix-it tickets on our system. And as you can see here, the number we talked about was about 39,000 currently. This is 39,000 different job orders on our system that aren't being dealt with right now. And you can see through this just goes back for the last few years that it is steadily rising. So we are getting further and further behind, and this is why you're seeing a need for us as one of the many indicators of why we need to be putting more money into our budget in this area. In the customer opportunity area, we are looking to invest more in energy efficiency. You'll see a ramp up on that, not just this coming year, but the year after that, and to push on our goals, to push more on solar, which we do both through our solar incentive program as well as the kickoff of our feed-in tariff. And by the way, that feed-in tariff, we just received a vote by City Council today that authorized our ability to delegating the authority so that the department can go and enter into feed-in tariff contracts and interconnection agreements. So we'll be able to do that without having to take that back to council, and that allows us to move forward on an expeditious basis. The cost of those programs are laid out here. Energy efficiency, we're ramping up each of the next 2 years over where we are right now. And in that process, not only additional dollars, but additional getting up to the point of getting to at least 1% per year incremental additions each year, and ramping up our local solar program during that period of time as well. You'll see a greater ramp of that when we look beyond that period of time as we start then getting into the 75-plus megawatt feed-in tariff, but that wouldn't actually hit our costs until beyond the FY 13-14 period, most likely. And on the other power investments, then overall, this gives you a summary of the ramp up in each one of these. We have a steady increase as we're going over the next few years. These are the key drivers that are driving our need for rate increases. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Phil to kind of go through some of the rate implications on the power side.
Okay, so as Mr. Nichols has indicated, it has been a while since our rates have been adjusted in terms of our base rates, and the rate component that recovers the cost for our power reliability program, it's been nearly 3 years since rates have been adjusted. In terms of our energy cost adjustment factor, it has been 2 years, and while we've done what we can to tighten our belt, the lack of rate adjustments does result in us ultimately deficit spending. We have under collections in both of those areas that can't persist. There have to be some adjustments made. Otherwise, we are in no position to go forward with the important programs that Mr. Nichols has laid out. So rate adjustments are required. And this is really an overview of why those increases are required. Based on our current rate level, you can see a line that goes across these bars, and we would collect about $3 billion per year in the power system. And you see a shortfall in the next fiscal year in 12-13 of about $149 million, and the shortfall will grow to $330 million in the next year. The basic rule of thumb here is that to collect a $30 million deficit, we need about a 1% increase in rates. So in this next year, we need about a 5% increase, and in the following year, another 5% on top of that to make up for that $330 million deficit. So as you look on this slide, you will see the rate increases that are proposed over the course of the next 2 years. I talked about needing about another 10% in revenue, so you can see that kind of at the bottom of the middle of the page. This is the system average rate increase over the 2 years, about 10.5%. Just in terms of looking at the rate per kilowatt hour, we'd be looking at increasing from 12.7 cents, another 1.4 cents on top of that. And we're going to come back to that in just a moment to indicate exactly what that 1.4 cent increase is paying for. You can see on the right-hand side of this slide the impact for our various customer types. We show typical residential customer who uses about 500 kilowatt hours a month, and over the course of the 2 years they'd be paying about another $3.35. Now, if you do the math there, you will note that that is less than a 10.5% increase. That really is something closer to the order of about a 5% increase. One of the things we've done here is shape the rate increase by consumption level. So in the power rates, we have 3 tiers of rates. So we are incentivizing people who use less to continue to watch their consumption. So the rate increases for people in the higher tiers is higher than in the lower tiers. So if you look at higher use single-family residential, someone using twice the power per month, their rate increase equates in about an $18 increase in the typical bill of $134. And that's closer to a 6% increase in year 1 and a 7% increase in year 2. In terms of small commercial over on the right, the increase is closer to the system average rate, about 4% in year 1 and about 5.8% in year 2.
So refresh my recollection, how many of our customers fall within the lowest tier, the 500 kilowatt tier? What percentage? Just roughly.
Yeah, I can tell you that here. The people who use 500 kilowatt hours or less, that covers 2/3 of our customer base.
Right. And those that use double that amount are in excess of 90% of our customers fall within that.
Okay. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the impact for the remainder of the commercial customer classes. For medium, we have three types of commercial customers. We have the small, which we just covered, medium, large, and then high demand. And in terms of these customer classes, the rate increase is pretty close to the system average. There's a bit more complicated rate structure here. It's based on both demand charges, so their peak usage, plus energy charges. So the rate that someone will actually pay depends on their consumption level here. But you can see, again, on a system average basis, looking at about 1.45 cents for medium commercial, about 1.35 for large, and 1.17 cents for the high demand customers. If you go to the next slide, I talked about a 1.4 cent increase in the system average rate. This chart shows what's driving that increase, and the largest component here is part of our power supply replacement program. That's rebuilding the local power plants. The primary driver there is the need to eliminate once-through cooling on our harbor plants. That's about 31% of the increase. The need to ramp up to achieve a 33% renewable portion of our power supply by 2020. That's driving about a quarter of the increase. Just basic fuel cost increases, and the cost of natural gas is expected to go up. It's very low, but it will increase. That's about 11% of the driver. The power reliability program, the fact that we want to spend about another $100 million on reliability in each of the next 2 years is a key driver here, of about 16% of the increase. And then, as Mr. Nichols indicated, we want to increase the funding for programs to allow consumers to take control of their energy use in terms of providing for some of their own solar power and conservation efforts is about 17% of the total.
Phil, let me, does this slide imply that none of the increase will go to items such as base salary or salary increases or pension cost increases or other administrative costs of the department?
It was not meant to imply that. What we did is allocate some of those costs across these programs. So a lot of our people are working on these programs, the great majority of them. So we allocated those salary costs and pension cost increases. We really don't have much in the way of pension cost increases in the next 2 years. There was a big tick up to this current year, but that's not really a driver here. But the basic salary costs are embedded in these other areas.
So taking, for example, rebuilding local plants, the 44 cents that you're indicating here is not just a pure capital investment, but it's capital plus other rising costs.
For all the costs that we talked about in the numbers that were presented, they included both operating costs and capital costs. Just for simplification purposes, we wanted to talk about one number.
Commissioner Parford?
Yeah, Phil, just to be clear, the fuel increase is wholly natural gas. None of that is coal.
Part of that is some coal costs as well.
Could you break that down? Is it half and half, or what would be the increased cost of coal during that fiscal year?
I don't have that at my fingertips. We can look that up for you.
Thank you.
So 56% of this rate increase is driven by regulatory mandates. Is that right?
Yes. Well, actually more than that.
Because 31% and the 25%.
And the 25%, but also a portion of the, while we certainly want to do and believe we should be doing energy efficiency, and we want to do and believe we should be working with our customers on giving an option for solar, in both of those areas there are state laws that specify levels that you should, minimum levels that you should be doing as well. And that is reflected in these. We're doing a tad bit more on the solar incentive program by virtue of the financing mechanism that we're going, but the financing mechanism that we've used actually lowers the cost and enables us to do more solar than we would have if we were doing it just in a more conventional manner. But so I guess I would look at this more, if you were to look at it from a regulatory perspective, you're looking at about 73% or so. Let's say round number. 70% of these cost increases are tied to regulatory mandates.
So arguably the discretionary parts of the budget are the power reliability program, right?
Right.
And the customer efficiency are the
No, it's the fuel, which really is beyond our, and fuel is fuel.
It's a pass-through, right?
Fuel is a pass-through. Fuel is fuel. It's out there. It's a cost. It's a cost that we incurred over which we don't have control, other than hedging programs, which evens out the cost year over year, but it doesn't divorce you from the long-term cost effects.
Thank you.
Okay, the next slide shows that our rates will remain competitive compared to neighboring utilities, even with the impact of the proposed increase layered on top. So the blue would be our existing rates, and the yellow would be the increment on top of that. And you can see that's still below neighboring utilities. Another observation I would make here, this is for the typical 500 kilowatt per month customer. At higher consumption levels, there's even a much greater advantage that our customers have compared to peers. And one reason for that is we have 3 tiers of rates, and some of the other utilities have even more tiers where you really pay a lot in the higher consumption levels.
I can't see because of our general counsel's head, but the not suggesting it's larger. Who's so it's San Diego Gas and Electric on the far right?
Yeah.
Okay.
San Diego, Southern California, Edison, Burbank, Glendale, and Pasadena. So these are the 3 larger of our neighbors in Southern California munis, and the other 2 are the Southern California investor-owned utilities.
And Phil, how do they compare on the commercial side? I would assume they're closer.
Yeah, on the commercial side, the rate structures really vary, so you almost have to look at what type of customer. Is it a small, large, and what's their demand factor? We've seen a lot of variance. I think in nearly all cases we're very competitive, although you could probably pull out an instance or two where another utility might offer a lower rate.
Let's take small commercial, though. How do we compare and say small commercial?
Yeah, small commercial is one that, particularly at very low load factors, our rates can tend to be a little higher. However, the great majority of customers would pay less in LA. So if you have a load factor of above 30%, then our rates are typically going to be lower. But because we have a kind of a fixed component of our bill, whether you're using any power or not, based on your peak,
The demand.
we can be higher at some instances.
And on this slide, you're taking the numbers without utility user tax. What happens if you factored in the tax?
If you factor in the tax, which is depends on the type of customer, but it's on the order of about 10%, we could be a little higher. And one other thing I should point out about this is the yellow includes our proposed rate increases, and rate increases that may be pending or proposed at other utilities is not shown in this chart. And we know that in the coming years they're going to face a lot of cost pressures just as we do.
So it's not an exact apples and apples. If anything, I think all in, I think we're showing as comparable as we reasonably can do. And in some cases, you do have other utilities that have other user fees that aren't necessarily reflected in those rates as well. It's kind of hard to capture.
Right. Does LA DWP user fees tend to be higher than other neighboring utilities?
It varies. We're certainly higher. We're certainly higher than some. You know, at the end of the day, we're looking at rates and costs over which we have control on here, and over which this board has control. All in, though, even if you had no other user fees with the others, you add user fees on ours, and you start looking at what these other utilities already have in the way of some pending rates, depending on what happens in the determination of those rates by their governing bodies or their regulatory bodies. We firmly believe that we will consistently be below other utilities' rates on an average basis.
And again, these numbers apply to 2/3 of our customers.
That's correct. 2/3 of our residential customers.
Residential customers, yes.
Okay, turning to water for a moment, and I'll flip on. Again, kind of consistent with what we talked about at our budget discussion last week. Key programs that drive rates here are our local water supply program, which is those things that we're doing to get off of importing water and our purchases from Metropolitan Water District, our compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Program, and our water system reliability program. These are the elements shown within, and we've discussed several times. I won't take your time up here today on those. But there's a consistent pattern here as well. When you look at those programs, from local water supply to the safe drinking water to reliability, in each year, this is the current year, these are the next 2 years, we are moving up pretty sharply in our investments in these areas. The local water supply program being ones that these are the investments that we believe will long-term shield us more from the variabilities that we're seeing in this very year from higher MWD purchase costs. The Safe Drinking Water Program being ones that we have to do by regulatory compliance, and the Water System Reliability Program being things that we need to do to reverse the average of 3.5 breaks per day, 7 days a week in our water system. Let me turn it over to Phil to go over a little bit on the rate side.
Okay, so this chart shows the anticipated rate increases we're proposing over the next 2 years, and again, this does exclude purchased water. We don't yet have our estimate for what we're going to spend on purchased water until early May, so we've excluded that from this chart. What this chart does is it starts with the rates that are in effect as of this quarter. So it does reflect the recent increase in the water quality adjustment factor, and you can see that for a typical residential Tier 1 customer, their current bill would be about $42.77, and over the course of the 2 years, they'd be asked to pay another $2.53 It's a total increase of about 5.9 cents.
5.9%.
5.9%. Yes, and $2.53. And you can see high-use, single-family residential using about twice as much power, twice as much water. The increase is about 4.5%. Now, this is kind of a strange result. Typically, we would like to encourage conservation and provide a tiered rate structure where you use more water, you're going to pay more. This is kind of something that's something we're going to be correcting in year 2, but in year 1, you'll note that the increase is actually smaller if you use more water. And that, again, is kind of it's happening with our tiered rate structure, and the pass-throughs aren't included in the second tier. So the increase in the water quality doesn't affect those customers as much. But this is something we're going to be revising in our proposal in the second year to correct for this kind of abnormal situation. In terms of small commercial, they'd be looking at an increase of about 4.8% over the 2 years. And again, these rate impacts do vary by consumption and type of customer. We are not alone in having to face some increased costs due to the factors that Mr. Nichols laid out. We just did a quick survey of what's happening at other water utilities in the region and in the state. And if you just kind of laid a line across the 5%, that's what we would be proposing. You can see that some of our peers are facing substantially higher rate increases. So just as an example, Golden State Water Company in Orange County is proposing an increase in excess of 20% next year. And this chart shows that our rates do remain very competitive compared to neighboring utilities and others in the state. This is an increase that you'll note the average bill that we showed on the previous slide differs a little bit compared to this slide. We're comparing the entire current fiscal year versus other utilities, so that's why that differs just a bit. But even with the proposed increases, our rates will remain very competitive.
Phil, can I ask you, I'm going back to page 25, and I did notice that the high-use single-family residential seems to somehow, skirt some of the higher impacts, and ideally I would think that people who use more water in the same way that people use more power would ultimately perhaps pay a little extra. And so when the CIS system is up and running, and maybe this is a question for you, Mr. Nichols, does that give us greater latitude to perhaps add some additional tiers, and we can fix this little problem that's in our water rates? Because it really strikes me as a disincentive that the more water you use, the lower you pay.
But isn't it more a cost allocation issue than?
Well, it is a couple of things. Commissioner Parfrey is correct that in terms of if we were to go and make some additional tier changes to our water system, our current CIS system, it would be a nightmare to even make that happen. But setting that issue aside, one of the issues you see here is that there are some fixed costs that are being allocated across the customers. And if you're already paying a lower amount because you have a lower use, it ends up being a fixed cost and ends up being a higher percentage increase, even though the cost that you're paying is no higher than the cost that someone else is paying. The end result, however, is right. You want to be able to have, ultimately, we want to have rates that incent the right behavior. And one of the things that we talked about in some past meetings is the fact that one of the things that we want to engage is a relook at our whole cost allocation and rate structure. It's something we need to do. It's something we need to update. It is not a simple process. And in fact, I've had discussions with Dr. Pickle, the ratepayer advocate, about just this issue, about the fact that once we go through and get the determination of rates here so that we're getting the revenue that we need for both power and water to pay for these mandated programs, to pay for providing these appropriate options for our customers, and for paying for reliability reinvestments in our system, that we need to turn our attention then to changing how we allocate, at least considering changing how we allocate that. We would anticipate having a lot of public discussion about that. That's probably that's a one-year process done right, and to get it back into our memory of what preceded all of us, I think sitting, well, I guess Jim was probably here, and Aaron was here. But in the early 90s, we had a blue ribbon committee on water to take a look at our water rates, and it was during outgrowth of that we went to a 100% volumetric rate. There is no fixed charge for our residential customers. It's a 100% volumetric rate. That was what, a 2-year period to go through, that we went through getting that blue ribbon committee, getting their input, changing the rates, and then finding a way to get it worked through on our system to be able to get it done. I'd like to cut that time in half when we start looking at these issues on both the water and the power side, and hopefully we'll get that done next year.
Okay, so just to conclude our presentation, the proposed rate increases will fund 4 important priorities that are shown here. First and foremost is the need to comply with a variety of state and federal regulatory mandates that apply to both the water and power system. The second important priority is we have to address our aging infrastructure. So we are proposing a 27% increase in funding for reliability for the power system and a similar increase for water system reliability. And failure to make those investments puts us in the mode of having to respond to outages like occurred this morning, and that's a far more costly way to deal with things, not to mention the impact on customers. So the third item is on the customer opportunities for power and water. We're increasing our conservation funding by 43% in terms of energy efficiency and over 94% in the water system. So it's very substantial increases. And finally, we would propose funding for customers to take control of their energy destiny, to install solar power, both the continued funding for the solar incentive program and for the solar feed-in tariff program, ultimately reaching a goal of about 150 megawatts by 2015.
I think Commissioner Moss has a question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I mean, maybe first to Mr. Lever. Does the rate structure proposal that increased proposal that you're putting before us, does that provide us with enough cash and revenue to support the debt coverage service ratios that we're going to need for our borrowing?
Yes, it does. When we set the rates, it is to comply with certain financial metrics, including minimum debt service coverage levels, debt to capitalization. So we look at all of those factors. This does put us to standards that we think are appropriate to maintain our credit rating. I should note we will be bringing to you a proposal to reduce the debt service coverage level for the water system. So this does contemplate a reduction in that standard. We believe still consistent with maintaining the AA ratings, but to maintain the current standard that the board had approved in the past would require rate increases slightly higher than what we showed today.
On the water side?
That's on the water side.
Okay, so that kind of segues into my next point, which I'll turn to Mr. Nichols on. Odd as this sounds to me coming out of my mouth, I just wonder if we're not shooting high enough. You know, at our last presentation, we gave you some feedback that, you know, perhaps there wasn't enough being allocated for the energy efficiency and for some of the incentives to customers, among other things. And obviously, if we were to do more in those areas, we have a choice. We either cut it from somewhere else to put it in that area, or we have to go to a little bit higher rate structure. And hearing this just now, that on the water side, even with the proposed increase in rates, we're not entirely covering the current debt service coverage ratio. I'm just wondering if we're really throwing enough on the table here at this time.
Well, it's a good question. It's one that we have debated extensively over. And I'll remind ourselves, last year when we were talking about this, we were talking about approximately, you know, 5 pushing up against 6% per year every year for 3 years, and that included this year that we're just now going into the final quarter of, for which we didn't have those adjustments anything close to that level, none for power and a fraction of that for water. and yet we are proposing going forward for the next 2 years cumulatively at rates that are lower for those 2 years than we were talking about last year. Part of it is we have been looking at cutting things more. Part of it is on the power side, we have had some benefit of lower natural gas prices that have helped some, and we expect that to hold for reasonably lower levels for the next couple of years. We don't control that. We hedge around that, but we don't control it. And we have pushed off some things. I mean, in reality, for example, in the energy efficiency and in the water conservation area, some of that requires getting programs put together. Some of that requires staffing levels, staffing that we have let attrit. That is, we haven't replaced some staff that have retired in both of those areas in this last year as part of our budget cuts to maintain where we are in the course of this year. We could not meaningfully ramp up in this balance of in this next fiscal year starting July 1 anything significantly above these levels in energy efficiency or water conservation, because we can't hire and train people quickly enough to get there. And that's why you see a little bit, there's an increase in a meaningful increase, but a bigger increase in the second year, because we can actually start then getting programs level, getting people available to do that, and getting the commitment of our customers during that period of time. So one thing that we will be talking about, and a little bit lagged here in terms of timing, probably a little bit later this year, later this summer, is looking at a 5-year financial plan. So it starts looking at years 3 through 5 beyond this period of time. And during that period, we are planning on presenting to this commission and to our customers consideration of ramping up further in several of these areas. In energy efficiency, looking at the prospect of what would a higher solar program mean, what in the water conservation, more in the local water supply program, more in our power reliability program, and more in our water infrastructure replacement program. So we can start taking a look at, if we bump some of those up, what do we think we get for that, to do a little bit more than we're talking about here to address some of your concerns. But one thing that I would go back to what Mr. Leiber was saying, on the water side, we believe that we can get by with a lower debt service coverage than we used to hold, and we think we can do that. We think we can use less of our customers' hard-earned rate dollars to make that happen and still maintain our solid credit rating. We don't believe we can make dips into that on the power side and still be able to retain those ratings.
Okay. Is that the end of the presentation?
That is the end of the presentation. Take any other questions you might have.
Again, this was just for information.
Right.
And this will come back to us.
Well, exactly, and this will come back to you, probably the earliest that this would come back to you would be June. In terms of a vote, we are going to be starting another fairly robust set of workshops on this to get input. We'll see through the course of that if it changes our views on what we might do. I do anticipate some of the questions that have been posed here today will be questions that will be discussed in those public workshops as well.
I've heard Mr. Wilkinson's comments on this.
Yes, certainly have.
Good, thank you. Let's go now.
I do have 2 speaker cards.
Oh, I'm sorry. 2 speaker cards on 22B?
Yes. The first speaker is Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, also DWP liaison for our council. The S word. This is very nice, the rates. Replacement of aging infrastructure, that is deferred getting away from deferred maintenance. And by the way, fix-it tickets are a good indication of repair maintenance approach rather than preventative or scheduled. And you might say, what is the strategy here? Do we have a strategic plan that says, okay, we're going to go with a 100-year replacement cycle on water pipes, valves, pump stations, things like that? Do we have any context that shows the policies that this is based upon? Basic utilities. What is your replacement cost? How can you compare against other more recently constructed systems when you don't know what their replacement cycle is. If you had to go to a 100-year replacement cycle, the rates might go way, way up. I don't know, because we don't know what the comparison is. So first thing is, what are the strategic policies that this is based upon? And, oh, by the way, my strategic policy is efficiency. My 2 houses, we consume about 40 gallons per person per day, about 3 kilowatt hours per person per day. Compared to these rates, you can double the rates and it won't really give me a problem because I'm one of those micro users down at the bottom. And we're trying to figure out what to do with this summer. But the basic issue is, what are your policies that are driving this? And the use of next century, let's get this century done first before we even start talking about the next century. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Linda Romney.
Again, I say this is not the time. You have the greatest depression in recorded history. You have the greatest unemployment in recorded history. And now what you're going to do is the highest rate increase for the Department of Water and Power, 30%, and then you're going to combine that with another 10% rate increase for electric, and you're using dinosaur equipment. There is such a thing known as Bloom Energy, www.bloomenergy.com. And those individuals who are using the Bloom Energy, which is green energy, their rates right now that they're paying are considerably less than what the electric is currently, not to mention what you're proposing. The fact of the matter is that for a $5,000 box for every resident, we can have unlimited electrical power. Yet we're talking about something like this. You're a dinosaur. You're putting nothing into it except for protecting your pensions. And as far as 10 HCFs for your average residents, or 12, HCFs for your average residents per month, obviously these people don't live in a home. They don't have any vegetation that they water. And as far as 500 units per month for 2/3 of your electric, I sure would like to see the statistics on that, because it doesn't make any sense. Because if you consider in the residential, and I only warm 2 rooms, and my rate is more than this. And I have infrared heat, which is supposed to be the best heat that you can have. I warm 2 rooms in my whole house, and yet I use more than 500 kilowatt per month. What I'm saying to you is that the ratepayers cannot afford this. I know if you work for the city, you can. But it's time now for everybody who can get out of the city of LA to get out. Vote with your feet. Get out, get out, get out.
That was the last speaker for that one, yes.
Anything else on item 22B? No, okay. Let's go back to the regular agenda, item 10.
Commissioners, item 10 is an agreement, proposed agreement with Schweitzer Engineering Laboratory. This is part of our substation automation project that we've started back in 2002. And basically, I have some pictures that shows the extent of this work that we've been doing and the scope of this contract. Back in 2002, we have about 198 substations in our distribution system that we've identified for upgrades. We've done about 120 of those stations we've upgraded, and since then we have regulation on NERC and FERC and technology that we want to go back and upgrade those systems for automation. And we also have 78 new substations that we want to put in these type of technology. So just the one of the typical control room, as you can see, on your right-hand side is all the new equipment, the electronics that control the equipment is on the right-hand side, and at the control, the terminal that you see here. So the old bench and meter control boards have been replaced with the electronic control where the operators sit in this station here and control the operations of this substation. The old this is one of the existing protection system that exists in the control room, and this is the new equipment that we have replaced it with. So a lot of this work is done under the energized conditions, and we have to isolate the system and get it replaced and test it and put in service, to keep the operations of the systems going. So this contract allows us to get the material, the technical support, and integrate it with our engineering and our workforce. We have over 200 employees that do this work, and there's a component of training in there also.
Are there questions? John, Mr. Parfrey?
Thanks. Aaron, let me ask you, I saw that 120 substations were completed in 5 years, and yet now we're looking at 7 years to complete 78 substations. So 120 substations, 5 years, that's 24 a year, and for 78 substations over 7 years, that's 11 per year. I also noticed that it was for 120 substations to modernize them, it was $50 million, but for 78, it's $70 million. So is this due to the substations being placed at generating stations? What accounts for the higher cost and the longer duration?
A lot of the scope that we have today is different than the scope that we had when we started the program. So since 2002, a lot of the cybersecurity and additional communication protocols have kicked in. A lot of the equipment that we're buying is to replace the stuff that we've replaced back in 2002.
Really?
So this part of it is communications, and we're adding fiber optics, fast communication systems into these relays and communication channels that we have. So part of that cost is going to that modernization part that we want to continue. Again, we might be at the end of this program going back and also retrofitting some of the stuff that could be obsolete by the time we're done with this. But this basically gives the visibility. Some of you have been at the Energy Control Center. At the Energy Control Center right now has to send a physical operator to these stations and operate the station and communicate via phones. This will give the visibility to our Energy Control Center that looks at every equipment that's in the yard and has the capacity to control it from one station, and that's what the automation is all about.
So, Aram, are there any issues regarding integration between the system that was installed by Convergent from 2002 forward, 2008, and the one that's proposed today that Schweitzer is going to put in?
There are technical issues that we've resolved, and there's always an issue of software and hardware that we need to make sure that when we hook up this stations, some of these stations are built back in late 20s, early 30s, and they have equipment in them right now that we need to have that interface done. The same thing with Convergence. We've done the interface analysis, and everything that you see here is basically we have designs and implementation plans that make sure those are all compatible.
And are these upgrades, have they been seismic tested? You know, we want to make sure that they're hardened so that they're...
Part of our requirements are we require these components to be withstanding our seismic requirements, and it's part of our specifications to make sure they comply.
And last, I noticed that there's some stimulus projects that are associated with this, and I know that that clock is expiring. So are there some deadlines that we have to meet related to the RS spending?
We have some deadlines that we have to meet. One of them coming up is June 2013, is where we have to have 52,000 meters installed. The two stations, the substations that's in your board package, RSJ, Receiving Station J, and Distributing Station 88 are part of that micro smart grid component that we are using ARA funds to use, and we're using the substation automation program to kind of be a subset of that are of funding that we want to make sure we test the smart grid systems.
We're going to hit the deadline, so that's the question.
We always do.
Other questions on item 10? Is there a motion to approve?
There is.
Second? Second. Any objections? Hearing none, item 10 passes. I'd like a motion possible to defer item 11.
So moved.
Second?
Any objections? Hearing none, item 11 is deferred. Item 12. This one's pretty straightforward. I assume we've all read it. Are there questions on item 12?
Yeah, I just have one.
Let's get someone up here.
Okay.
Who's presenting item 12?
I'll present.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr.
You don't even have to present it.
has a question.
I just have a question.
Mr. President, if I may, I just want to ask why you're requesting a deferral on item 11.
It was in part because the material was submitted late and a couple of board members did not have time to review it adequately. But we will it will be on the next.
All right.
Question on, as I understand it, at the end of the pre-engineering, we will have committed to pay up to $100,000. And then at that point, according to the contract, it says that the board will have the opportunity, or the department will have the opportunity to review whether we want to go forward.
Yes.
Is that was correct
Yes.
to understand? Well, I'd like to just amend our resolution when the time comes. I don't know, maybe I'm out of order because we don't have a motion yet, but I'd like to amend the resolution to make sure that at the end of the pre-engineering, it does come back before the board for additional approval before we
That
go
was our
forward.
intent.
Yes.
Why don't we deem them, why don't you make the motion and we'll deem it so amended.
Okay,
Is
so
there a
let me
second to the
move.
amendment?
I'll second the amended motion. Yeah.
Okay. Do I need to repeat it for you, Barbara, or you got it? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comment on the amended motion?
I wish to not second, but third the motion.
Okay.
Which makes it unanimous.
Yeah. Clearly, there are no objections. Item passes.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 13.
I do have one speaker card on 13.
Why don't we take the speaker first? You can sit down now. Have a seat. Get comfortable.
Okay, the speaker is Linda Romney. I don't see her. She may have left.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, on item 13, there are questions or?
I do have one question, and it's around the goal that WOL has of the 15% MBE, WBE. What do we do to go back and ensure that they are adhering to what that goal is, and in fact, the goal has some teeth and not like my pledge to lose 15 pounds between now and June or something?
One of the things that we required, first of all, I'm Stefan Tucker. I'm manager of project and construction management of our Water Engineering and Technical Services Division. One of the things that we're doing with WOL is we're requiring them, as a part of their contract, to do extensive outreach for minority and women-owned businesses. We had an outreach event just this past Thursday where we had over 100 actually about 96 businesses present, both minority, women, disadvantaged businesses, so that WOL can, make that connection and be introduced to those people who are interested in helping us deliver this project. In talking with WOL, they're very confident and they're very committed to making sure that our 15% MEBE and 7% WEBE are obtained on this project.
So I love commitment, but I really like the incentives. Is there a way we can build in incentives based on whether or not they meet those goals into this type of contract? Otherwise, we have no real assurance other than their representations they're going to meet those numbers, do we?
Yeah.
I think, if I get interrupted, I think that's more of a legal question than a
Okay, Mr.
procedural
Brown?
one.
We can talk about it offline, but basically, you cannot. You can't have quotas.
No, not a quota. It's an incentive. It's a mechanism that says if you reach certain numbers, right, you get paid X number of dollars. It's not. You don't have to do that. It's just a consequence for not reaching it. I guess we could debate whether or not that's a quota or not.
Yeah, and I would defer to the fact that it really puts enough incentive there that it would be a quota.
Okay.
Mr. President, there's no sale there.
When it's time for a rebid, if someone didn't reach their goal that they said they were going to, would that be a negative
Well, that would be,
outcome?
well,
That could be
if
held
you have a
against them?
specific goal, and the goal presumably is a legal goal, then it would be a breach of contract.
So if they don't meet the stated goals in this contract, would it be deemed a breach?
It wouldn't be deemed a breach. However, this contract is set up in 4 phases, and what we're asking for approval for today is just the construction of the first phase of the contract. If for some reason that we were dissatisfied with Wall as a contractor, then we have the option of not awarding phases 2, 3, and 4. Phases 2, 3, and 4 don't have compliance deadlines as Phase 1 does. Phase 1 has to be delivered per Department of Health Services compliance deadline by November 2014. But we do have options on the following phases.
So what's the sense of the board? I mean, since the council and I can't agree on the difference between an incentive and a quota, which I understand that, doesn't it seem appropriate that we should have these goals be terms of the contract? And if you don't meet those terms, that it should be deemed a breach?
Well,
I mean, if in fact we want to put...
Go ahead.
No, if in fact we want to put teeth in the goal.
Is the goal in the contract, or is this something that you got to say outside of the contract?
First of all, let's talk about what the goal is. I mean, if the goal is a specified percentage, okay, then that's illegal, okay?
Okay.
Okay. What I'm saying is if somebody puts in the contract, they're going to use their best efforts to meet something, a specific amount, and they don't use their best efforts, and we do track that, then that would be a breach of the agreement, and we could terminate and then sue for damages. But once again, by taking a specified goal, which per se is illegal, and putting in the contract, I mean,
Makes it a quota.
Yeah.
And I thought that the subcontracting participation was a good faith effort in any event. Is it not, or?
Subcontractor participation was good faith effort for the pre-construction services, which they committed to do the 15 and 7%. However, so far for the task orders that have been approved for Wall, I think they're up at about 28% participation for MEB and WEB subcontractors.
Of the ones they've announced so far?
The ones that have been approved so far.
I'm going to try one more time, Mr. Counsel. So what if we have a success fee? What if we have a success fee based on the participation of WBEs and MBEs? Was that all? Would you also deem that a quota?
The success, you want to take?
If I may, good faith effort, Eric Rosenblatt with the Legal Division, City Attorney's Office. Good faith effort, as Commissioner Moss has indicated, is the operative term that the case law has been seeking and approving as it's been coming down. Anything more than that, any actual effort to reach a targeted number and actually reach that has been found to be unconstitutional up to this point.
Now that's 2 to 1.
But what do our contracts say around good faith?
Yeah, in fact, where in the contract is it? Because I have the contract right here. Where would I find it? Would it be a 5.1? Minority and Women Business Enterprise Outreach Program?
I'd like to ask a clarifying question while you're looking that up. Just to be clear, this is awarding a contract for Phase 1, and it's conceivable that the same contractors may be applying for additional phases at Headworks.
Yes.
And if we find them to have not complied with what we believe are maybe-weeby goals, we could put that as a determination in awarding future contracts. Is
One
that
of the
accurate?
things that we have committed on this particular contract, because there's 4 phases, is that we would come back to the board at the beginning of each phase to get approval to move forward with subsequent phases. And if this contractor was shown to be
At 5%.
non-compliant with our goals,
that would be
at
part of our
5%,
evaluation.
and that
as
would be
a
part
board.
of the evaluation.
And is the contractor in the room right now?
No, he's not in.
No, they're not.
Well, I have some light to shed on this one. If you go to page 140 of the contract, and I'll just read it since not everyone has the contract. The operative language is, it is the policy of the LADWP to provide minority business enterprises, women business enterprises, and all other business enterprises an equal opportunity to participate in the performance of all LADWP contracts. And here's the operative language. The contractor shall assist LADWP in implementing this policy and shall use its best effort to attain MBE and WBE participation, and to ensure that all available business enterprises, including MBEs and WBEs and OBEs, have an equal opportunity to compete for and participate. The contract itself doesn't even state the percentage.
The stated percentage figures are in the RFP.
Well, but where is it incorporated by reference here?
The RFP is incorporated by reference.
Well, I mean, one way to strengthen it is to put it right directly in the contract and not have an incorporation and say, you have agreed, boom, this is, for this contract, this is your number.
Best efforts means.
Yeah. I mean, would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I mean,
Mr. President, would that go some way towards helping
I'm
out?
actually inclined to want to put this off and take it into closed session, because there's legal risk in the discussion we're having right now. Is there an urgency to have the contract awarded today?
Well, we're up against a deadline, November 2014. We also have, we're proceeding with the design as we get advice from our contractor as we go along. And we're trying to get shovels in the ground by June in order to start the underdrain system for this reservoir and start full-blown construction by August in order to meet our November 2014.
It's not my goal to slow down this particular contract. It's my goal for us to have some sort of acceptable policy around putting teeth in, not providing quotas for, but putting teeth in when somebody commits to a goal, that it has meaning and not just numbers on a piece and numbers on a piece of paper. So I would move approval of 13, but would want to have a conversation with the board around how we implement goals around MBE, WBE clauses and contracts as we go forward.
Yeah, and my concern is that we've had this discussion for a couple of years now, right? And we're still in the same situation. And it seems to me, until we actually figure out a way to put the appropriate language into a contract, right, we'll have this discussion next year.
Well, I have another issue that I want to throw out here. That the resolution itself has got a problem, in that it talks about, therefore be it resolved that the board approve the expenditure of, and then there's no amount, plus a 10% contingency of $12.7 million. So I
That
think
was supposed to be corrected.
Yeah, well, my version of it does not have it corrected.
Okay.
So in any event, even if we approve the resolution day, we need to specify the amount of the contract.
Yeah, for some reason, that was omitted, and we caught it yesterday, and we tried to circulate the final number in there for
Amended or
126.5 million.
Yeah, no, we can do it by motion.
Yeah,
That shouldn't slow anything down. I just wanted to point it out there.
But the number was supposed to be 126.5 million in there.
Sorry, identify yourself for the record.
Simon Zodo, Supply Chain Services. Just to note that we'll be moving forward from the Good Faith Effort program to the Small Business program come this summer. With the Small Business Enterprise program, we will have mandatory subcontracting minimums and for outreach, and we'll resolve the 15.7 goal issue, and we'll put more teeth to it so that our contractors can meet the mandatory subcontracting minimums.
Why couldn't we include those in this contract?
It is available. We've been using mandatory subcontracting minimums, but the MSM or subcontracting minimum goes for MIBs, WIBs, and other business enterprises. and does not direct itself only to small businesses.
So our lawyer, so this avoids the quota issue we're all concerned about, right? So I'm going to ask the question again, why wouldn't we want to include small business goals in this contract?
Because we have not implemented the Small Business Enterprise Program yet.
And when will that program be implemented?
The tentative date is July 1st of 2012.
And you need the contract, you said you want to have shovels in the ground by when on this
By
contract?
June.
By June?
And by the way, as part of the agreement, the contractor is obligated to subcontract 90% of the work.
90% on this, so we have a huge subcontracting, even more than what that program is right now. I'd also point out, commissioners, that I think the fact that because this thing is phased the way it is, the board is actually in a position to have, I think you have a lot more leverage in this kind of a contract than you do on other ones to make sure that the contractor performs, because they really want to do phases 2, 3, and 4, and I think your discussion today is going to make it very clear to them that that's doubtful if they don't perform. So I think you've actually sent a very strong message in the discussion that you've had today.
Feeling of the board?
It's one thing to send a strong message, it's another thing for them to hear it. So they're not in the room, Jim, so how does that message get conveyed?
We will make sure that they hear it through the recording as well as tell them.
On the subcontracting, does the local business preference operate on that 90% subcontracting? In other words, will we have LA City and LA County businesses doing subcontracting there?
Because we've applied for and have been granted federal or state revolving funds for this, we cannot apply the local bid preference on this particular contract.
Well, we've got a couple options. We can defer the matter, we can act on it. What's the sense?
But there's a motion on the table to move 13 for approval.
Okay,
I will second that motion.
Okay, there's a...
Well, with the addition of the
The
contract.
amended motion.
26 million.
Which I would like to point out that while it didn't get in the resolution, it was on the cost and duration of the board letter. I apologize that it didn't get through. It's placed in the resolution.
But it is, go ahead with the vote.
Yeah, it's been moved and second, right? Any objection to the amended motion? Hearing none, item passes.
But I'd like to make sure that we have a policy in place that addresses this going forward.
Right, so you want like a signing statement to this particular resolution?
Not to this resolution. No.
It's a policy. So, Ron, why don't you come back at the next meeting?
Yeah, I would.
Maybe a kind of a proposed, but I think we should first discuss this in closed session.
Right.
Then we'll have open session on it. But I think I'd like it at the next meeting if at all possible. If not, if you need a little more time, just let me know.
So we'll follow up on that, and I think I have the sense of where you're looking for, and we'll get a group together, and both on the contracting side and the legal side, to come up with a recommendation for how we can deal with this to put the enforcement teeth that you're looking for on these contracts.
Thank you. Item 14. Is there a speaker?
No speakers.
I'd like to move to approve item 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, item 14 is approved. Item 15. We need a presentation?
Oh, this is, yeah.
Good.
No, I move for approval on this one.
I second it.
Any objections? Hearing none, item 15 passes. Good job. Item 16, it's not happening, so we have, actually, perhaps we can...
I would take items 17, 18, and 19 together.
As a group, yes.
Yes, and
okay.
I would then move for approval.
Is there...
Second.
I'm shocked.
That's why I seconded
Mr.
very
Moss?
quickly.
No, we have an understanding, so we're okay.
The point I want to make is Commissioner Moss has been working these items very diligently. So
Yes.
It's been very helpful to all of us.
Yes. So I'm
He has an enthusiastic
There's a
second.
motion,
I
a second, and a shot third. Right?
I approve the motion.
Okay. Hearing clearly no objections. Items 17, 18, and 19 passed.
20 would defer.
20 we already deferred. Was there a motion to defer? Did we get a motion to defer 20?
Yes.
Yes, you
Oh, we
did.
did? Okay, good. All right, we're on to filed items now. Are there questions about either the power system report or the water system or the system support?
Yeah, I just want to make a statement.
Which one are you referring to, Commissioner Moss?
I guess it's under the systems report. No, you know what? I withdraw that. I'll wait on that.
All right. Any other
I'll second his withdrawal.
information reports, investment reports, and third and fourth quarter reports? Questions or comments there? Hearing none, we'll deem those filed. The RPS project update, 22A.
I have a comment, Mr. President, on that. As you can see, the details on the RPS, we file this on a monthly basis. Just a couple things to note on that we've mentioned that the forecasted percentage for this year has slipped to 19%, and we might be below that. That's one significant item. The other items that what we'd like to bring to your attention is that we currently are under negotiations for signing contracts, solar, geothermal, and other contracts that will basically take us up to the 20% that we were, and then put us into those milestones legally that we have to be by the end of 2013 and 2015. So we need to get into contracts June timeframe of this year in order for us to meet those milestones. So just as information that we are going to close the negotiations fairly soon, and the board package will be coming to this board sometime in the June timeframe on these projects.
I recognize that we dipped a bit. Do we have a sense of what the costs are? Are costs going down also? We know. If you look at the average cost, last year where we were at the 20% versus this year where we're slightly below, what are the relative costs?
A lot of the costs were the short-term purchases that we've done last year in order for us to meet the percentages.
Right.
This year we're not executing on those purchases, so that's a part
the overall cost of the portfolio per unit is going down. Is that accurate?
Yes, with the percentages, because the rest of the percentages are locked in, except.
Well, I'm not saying suggesting that's an excuse, but one of the things we want to do is not only meet the goal, we want to bring down the cost of the RPS portfolio. Right?
But as we add more, the portion that we've reduced is the short-term purchases, which is a higher price. So we're going to replace it with a permanent 20-year price, which is going to reduce our overall cost. You're right.
Well, these contracts you're referring to, are they short-term purchases, or are they?
No, these are long-term.
Yeah, what he's suggesting last year to fill in at least a portion of the gap.
Yeah, we had short-term purchases that are
we're
more
eliminating,
expensive.
yeah, we're eliminating those now and replacing them with longer-term contracts where the price is lower.
Okay, but are those going to be actually, those longer-term projects that you're talking about on the contracts, are they going to be
much lower.
I know they'll be lower, but will they actually be contributing this year to the power?
No. If we enter into contract this year, by the time the groundbreaking happens and the actual delivery of these energies is going to be 3 years from now, 2.5, 3 years.
So then the question arises, what are we going to do, if anything, to make sure that we're above 20% at the end of 2020 or 2012?
I think we're making a choice not to do that.
Well,
No, that's
I don't
actually
know.
not true.
I don't know if that's the case.
We will be entering into some short-term contracts to top up a bit in relatively minor amounts. But I think the important point that Mr. Benjamin is introducing here, and this will be a topic that we'll discuss further, is we are going to need to make commitments in the June-July timeframe on projects.
Right.
Projects that will not hit our budget in fiscal year 12-13, some of which may start in the latter part of 13-14, some of which may not hit us until 14-15, but we are going to be making commitments. We'll be making commitments to those projects, and we'll have a much more full discussion of this before it's ever brought for your action. But we are potentially facing a circumstance that because of the lag time with where we are on our rate considerations for FY 13-14, that we may be doing something that we prefer not to do. We may be having to ask for some commitments to projects that we know that knowingly will ultimately require some incremental increase a couple of years out to rates overall. We will make that very clear before you do that. We'll lay that situation out. We just wanted to give you some forewarning that these matters will be coming before you. And the reason that we are doing it is to comply with the delivery dates and the volumes that we need to be able to meet those ramped-up requirements
So,
of
Ron,
the state law.
Are you concerned at all that our rate consideration this year in 2012 is going to be adversely affected by the fact that we're going to be dipping below the 20% this year?
No, I don't, as long as we're on a path to get back, and we are.
And what's the financial consequence to not meeting the 20%?
That's the difficult challenge, because this becomes a problem sometimes where regulation lags legislation. We have legislation that was passed last April that says thou shalt meet these requirements within these specifications and these timelines, and the Energy Commission and the California Air Resources Board both need to pass regulations with regard to this specific issue, many other issues as well, but among them, what is a violation, and that violation will be determined yea or nay as to whether you have violated by the California Energy Commission. And then once the California Energy Commission has established that there's been a violation, the California Air Resources Board will determine what the penalty for that violation is. Neither of those regulations have been established or adopted. There have been discussions of them, but dollar amounts have, to my knowledge, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm unaware of dollar amounts that have been yet associated with the failure to adhere to those percentages.
Not yet, but I think Mr. Nichols is right. We have three things to. One is the law on the RPS that we have to meet. That's one track. The other track is our CO2 footprint, but we have a gliding path going down that we must meet. And then the coal divestitures, of course, is going to be, it's not on our radar screen on these budget years, but it's coming up. So all these things are going to be in place for us to execute on those strategies.
Do we believe that the implementing regulations will be enacted retroactively?
I don't know at this point in time. I think.
John, if you have a view on that, or
no, my understanding is that they probably will not be, but I wouldn't take that to the bank.
Yeah, and I know it's.
You mean, are you insinuating that if we dip below now, that we could get penalized at this point?
That's the question I'm asking.
Well, let me add a little more clarity around that, and that is, it isn't a one-year obligation in this calendar year. It's an average over 2 years period of time. Actually, it's last year plus the next two, maintaining a 20% average over that 3-year period of time. So it's not a rifle shot point that you have to hit.
So with our current plan, do we think we'll maintain the 3-year average of 20%?
Yes. That is our target, and that is what we will bring before you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are correcting. We are correcting and giving ourselves some headroom for us to make sure those targets are met at the end of those compliance periods.
So the bottom line is, we're not in a panic situation. We have to run out and grab expensive short-term contracts to backfill or top off, I think, as President Sales said, our numbers.
I think the strategy, as Mr. Sales said, for the long haul, we might as well get into those and meet those targets with the cheaper prices and start acquiring these long-term assets.
But there is also a good story in that when LADWP went out and met its 20% RPS, we did so for a lower cost to our ratepayers than other major utilities. You're allowed to say yes, that's correct.
Even with the short-term purchases. That's
I look at it, in a way that we have to stay in the market in order for us to get all our capabilities, and that exercise that we went through that gives us that capability to take us to the 33%.
And we can anticipate going forward also that we're going to apply the same degree of rigor to drive down the prices on the renewables so that it's not a shock to the ratepayer.
Both on the energy side and on the transmission side, which is a bigger component of our delivery cost, both strategies is meant to give the lowest price for our ratepayer, combined.
And we're taking the approach where we're going to try to build a sustainable supply of renewable resources, which you don't do by short-term purchases. We need long-term agreements that get us to our ultimate goals.
Yeah, these are for long-term ownership and long-term
supply.
But what you're saying is this is coming up pretty soon.
It's coming up.
Yes.
And so it requires our attention.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that report? Esteemed file, I think we're up to closed session. You want to give us the admonition?
Yes, sir.
Didn't I just hear this?
Excuse me?
Deja vu.
The board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Section 54.957.1 of the California Government Code.
All right, thank you. We're going to go into closed session. Thank you all for coming.
We go back there?
Oh, just, oh, okay, let's go back.
Oh, we'll go back there?
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Man,